Hey there, everybody. It is Diane Lee. I am the Marketing and Communications Director here at ISI. We have a great show for you this afternoon, a great podcast, because we are talking about the very first Envision verified project. So it means we are going back in time. And I've got two lovely ladies here to talk to me. We've got Jen Nanetti, who is HDR. She's a sustainability consultant. And also our very own Melissa Pennycad, who is a senior executive here at ISI. So welcome, ladies. You excited?
Hi.
We're excited. All right. The first question is going to be very, very simple. And that is actually it's going to be pretty broad. It's going to be to Jen. And Jen, tell us the name of this project and why you guys sought Envision verification on it.
Sure. So this project is the William Jack Hernandez Sportfish Hatchery in Alaska. And it wasn't started thinking about Envision. The design was actually started in 2007 before Envision was, probably while Envision was ruminating in someone's mind. But the project owner and design team knew that sustainability was really important. And so they incorporated a lot of sustainable features into the project. And then when Envision came out, we wanted to test it on a project and thought that this project, because of all the sustainable features that were incorporated, would be a really good opportunity for trying out Envision for the first time. So it was a retro verification of Envision, primarily because they knew that any new project starting would take quite a while. And so it would be, maybe too long to be able to actually get a verification done, to kind of learn the lessons that they wanted to learn. So they did it retroactively and basically looked at what the project had done and how that aligned with Envision at the time, and did it to learn, some lessons and to, figure out if we wanted to use Envision going forward.
Sounds good. So you said retroactive. So what is that? I'm curious how hard that was because you've done a lot of projects since then. So how hard was it to do a project retroactive?
So it's harder to do a project retroactively, partially because you have to learn a lot about the project kind of in a short amount of time. It kind of depends on if the people, the design team, the owner are engaged in the process. That's very helpful. But you also, if you're actually going through verification and submitting documentation, you have to go back and collect all the documents, and they may not be easily accessible, or they're not necessarily organized in the way that you would look for them in relation to Envision credits versus how a project team might file their project documentation. So finding some of those things is way more difficult if you just start digging through documentation at the end versus looking to organize your documentation as you proceed kind of through a project process in conjunction with doing Envision.
Yeah, and that's what you always recommend, right, Melissa, that they should really try to, whenever they're doing verification, try to do it from the start as opposed, right? Isn't that kind of what you recommend? You have a lot of experience with this.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So, the William Jack Hernandez Sportfish Hatchery was, as Jen said, the very, very first project to go through verification. This was before Envision was even born. They had started thinking about sustainability and then used Envision retroactively. And you're exactly right, Diane, that Envision is a very, very effective tool to use at any stage of the project lifecycle. But we always recommend that Envision be used as early on in project planning and design as possible, as that's when there's the greatest ability to influence the sustainability and resiliency of a project. And of course, it also makes the pursuit of Envision verification much more seamless, if you will, for project teams. So absolutely. One trend that we are seeing that folks may be interested in is certainly since the very first project, we're actually seeing more and more projects pursue verification earlier on in the project lifecycle, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for them. You hear all the time that part of the difficulty is when you try to do it after the fact. So it's always good to get it done first. I want to remind people who are watching, if you have a comment or a question, engage with us. Go ahead and put it out there for us, and we'll have our guests answer it. Also, shout out to where you're from or where you're watching from. I'm in Washington, D.C., Alexandria area. What about you guys?
I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, check it out.
And I'm coming to you from my home office in Burlington, Ontario.
Yeah, so we're all over the place. So that means you probably are too. And we want to hear from you. I know you're all working at home remote right now. So where are you watching from? And ask us some good questions about verification in the fish hatchery. But let's go back to the, oh, look at this. We already got one. Popped right up, and I'm going to show it because this is pretty cool. Whoops. Hi from Greece. See? I love it. Yay. Houston, Texas. Here we go. I'm going to put it up on the screen for you. Awesome. See, I told you, I've got them all over the place. State of Georgia here. So let's talk a little bit about the fish hatchery. And while we're doing that, I want to show some pictures so people can actually see what it looks like. Let me see if I can find them for you, because this is pretty cool. First, I'm going to put this banner up so we have some stats. So it's 141,000 square feet. And is this correct, Jen? Produces 6 million fish annually?
That was the intent of the project when it was built, was approximately 6 million fish.
Okay, when it's running at capacity, right?
Right.
Okay, and stocks about 200 locations. That boggles my mind a little bit. And then it relies on the reuse technology. Can you kind of explain that to me as far as sustainability goes, and maybe talk about some of the sustainability things about this project that are really vital and important?
Yeah, so one of the things that was really important was that these kind of facilities are really resource intensive. And so the design team looked at ways to reduce energy and water use. So they incorporated state-of-the-art fish rearing recirculating technology to allow them to produce as many fish as they were looking for, while only using about 10% of the freshwater volume that they had previously used. They'd previously had 2 facilities, and by building this new facility, they merged that production into one, and in that use about 10% of the freshwater and 10% of the energy required in a conventional hatchery.
Gotcha. I'm showing some of the pictures of the hatchery that are pretty cool from the outside and from the inside. This one right here has a lot on it, but it really gives you a good idea of from the build and all the way through. Want to remind people, these can be found on our website. We have on our ISI site, you can go to the news section and find brochures from HDR and show these pictures. There's also a video in our verification directory where they can go ahead and take a look at those images. I suppose I could take it off your face. I had it up there and I'm the one talking. My bad. But we also, I want to remind people that we've got some questions, and we also have more folks here from all over the US, Boston, Washington, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Wow, check this out. The UK, South Florida. Jeez, I'm putting them all up there, guys. Austria, Jorge Ruiz, great, from Mexico. So literally all over wanting to hear about verification. So if you have any questions, please feel free to answer, put them in the window for us, and we'll bring them up. Jen, another quick question about lessons learned, because you did this retroactive. Talk to us a little bit about, since then, how many projects you have verified and the lessons you've learned from this and from others. I think that would be really beneficial for folks to hear.
Sure. So we just received acknowledgement of our 18th verification. Of that, we have been the designer on 16 of those, and we've facilitated Envision for 15 of them. So a few times we've been on a team that we've provided documentation for, but we have learned a lot of lessons. One thing that I would say is that each Envision project is unique. Each project is unique, and the way that Envision is applied to it is unique. So we've developed processes and tools and things to help us through the process, but they have to be tweaked each time because it depends on when we start Envision, what type of project it is, what type of project team it is, how long the project timeline is. There are just a lot of variables that make the process a little bit different each time. But we have learned, some general types of lessons that we apply every time. Some of them are simple things that each project does anyway, but we do it within our Envision process. So staying really organized is important. I mentioned documentation earlier. So collecting documentation as you move along, kind of really understanding what the criteria are looking for and collecting that documentation specific to criteria as you move along, communicating that to your project team so that when things are available that can help you to support points in the criteria, they can provide those to you. So the people writing the Envision documentation don't have to be searching for it, which also helps to engage the project team in the process so that they feel like, providing information for Envision isn't a separate part, something that's happening outside the regular project process. And communication is also really important, being able to explain the importance and also how it's integrated within the project to the owner, to the project team, consultants, and then eventually more publicly when the verification is done.
Yeah, and that communication, Melissa, and that collaboration is probably really integral to Envision and to how we work here at ISI. Talk a little bit about that importance of that communication and that collaboration for ENVSPs as they try to verify projects.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I really love about Envision is that there are some continuous themes that are woven throughout the framework. And one of the big themes is, in fact, stakeholder engagement and teamwork and collaboration. So even though there might be specific credits on those topics, you'll see that they are emphasized throughout multiple credits in the framework. So the ENVSP really does, in my mind, play a pretty key role, and it would be great to hear this from Jen as well. I see the ENVSP being a liaison, between disciplines and really bringing people together and picking their brain and asking some tough questions and really effectively using Envision to figure out where there are some possible trade-offs and some possible synergies. So if we're going to do this over here, and if we're going to apply Envision in this way, what are some of the trade-offs? And I think that's really the role of the ENVSP, is to have that kind of deep knowledge of the Envision framework and really be able to ask those tough questions and look for synergistic opportunities. And that, stakeholder engagement and teamwork and collaboration are fundamental in order to do that effectively. What would you say, Jen? Does that ring true based on all of your experience with Envision?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think when you were talking, it made me think about when we do kind of the initial assessment of Envision, and we have multiple technical professionals within the room, and they're preparing for kind of a long day of looking through the different credits in Envision, and sometimes that can be a little overwhelming from the beginning. I mean, Envision's a relatively large system. The manual is pretty big. There's a lot of questions in there, and as we get going and are asking the Envision questions relevant to their project, they start to get ideas and really open up to the fact that the questions that are being asked are really asking them to have a sustainability conversation really related to their project. And it's something that's really, a lot of times that's the only project people are working on. It's really near to them. They're immersed in it, and they get excited about thinking about what sustainability could do or how it could impact the things that they're doing, which is nice. And it kind of going back to the synergistic aspect, one person will then come up with an idea, and that conversation really brings all those technical people together so that they can, decide, not decide right there, but kind of like come up with those new ideas that they might be looking into in relation to sustainability, or if you're doing it really early, what might be like some of those things that it might be introducing to a project that they hadn't thought about before. So that I think that's probably the most fun part, is to see people listen to those ideas that the Envision criteria bring out and start having these ideas that of things that they may be able to do in the project, ways that they may be able to improve sustainable performance. And people get excited about that because they love their project, that it's theirs. And so that is one thing as an ENVSP that's nice, because that really does engage the rest of the project team, and allows them to kind of have a stake in what Envision is doing, which makes them way more successful.
Yeah, if more people are involved and engaged in that process, it just brings something fresh and new, exciting to it. And I think that's one of the things about verification that is so important. Like probably if you had to go back, Jen, and when you first started doing verified projects and talk to yourself way back then and say, hey, do this, what would you tell yourself, your 2013 self, about verification and how to go about doing these projects? And I'll give you some time to think about it if you want. Because that's a tough question if you're, but I want to put some more folks up so we can show where they're from. We've got Italy here, our own Christy, Lincoln, Nebraska, right there near you, New Hampshire. We've got Reston, Virginia, and apparently they did a feature on this hatchery that people can check out from May of 2013. So check that out. We've got Canada as well, Ontario, in your neck of the woods. And our own Anthony Kane is watching today, our CEO and president. Thanks, Anthony. So a lot to talk about, but not just about 2013. We want to kind of talk about the future as well, because we have just passed a really great milestone, have we not, Melissa? Tell us what we're celebrating and what you can tell us about that.
We have come a long way since those early days in 2013. I remember fondly, and I even chatted briefly with Anthony about this the other day. I remember being so excited when we hit our 10 project milestone. Well, I am really happy to report that we have reached a very important milestone. We have fully verified the sustainability and resiliency of 100 infrastructure projects to date, which is amazing. And collectively, these projects are worth $25 billion in development. So pretty momentous occasion for us at ISI.
That's awesome. And we hope to do 100 more in the next, 5 years. Let's do 5 years. We'll set a goal instead of 10 years, right? We have another one real quickly. We've got Italy here as well. And Victoria from Leander, Texas. So literally all over the map. I think the only place we don't have is Alaska. And if we do, speak up, folks. A place I've always wanted to go. So Jen, have you thought about that answer to that question, what you tell yourself about doing an Envision verified project? From that, sorry, I'm messing with my dog again.
The hard part is, I think that the processes that we have been such an evolution. Like I said, every project is different. So it's almost hard to say anything other than organize yourself early, don't procrastinate. Ask a lot of questions. I mean, I don't know that there's anything that I wouldn't say there's anything that we did wrong in our learning process. It kind of has to evolve, the way that it does. I mean, for people starting out now, I would say, ask questions of other people who have done it, take advantage of the tools and the webinars and things that ISI has, so that you can kind of in that way learn from what other people have experienced. So maybe some of the small lessons, you can learn those or hear about them from other people, or if you come across it, you'll say, oh, well, I heard about that somewhere, so let me go back and look. But I don't know that our process would be the way that it is if, I had a time machine and had gone back and told my 2013 self to do something differently.
Well, I'm curious, though, what you've learned a lot over the years about Envision. And do you think that if you wouldn't have gone through verification, that you might not have learned a lot of those things? Like, how advantageous is it for ENVSPs out there to try to get projects going through verification because of what you are able to attain through it?
Right. Yeah, there's nothing like putting a project through verification. Even just taking it through an assessment doesn't get you into the weeds the way that writing a narrative for a cover sheet does, or looking for the types of documentation that support that. I mean, in that, there are definitely a lot of lessons that you learn with the responses that you get from the verifier and ISI. So yeah, there isn't a substitute for that, for what you learn going through the verification. I think the most important thing, if you don't have a project that's going through verification, to just study the guidance manual. Really to really look at what the criteria are looking for, and not as an overview. Definitely not just as reading the titles of the credits, because what's in there in the details of those criteria can be quite different than what you might assume is in it based on a title. So I would say, even, obviously you don't have to go through verification. You don't have to pay to be for a project to be verified, but you could use the framework in detail without doing that. And I think that in itself would be a really good exercise for somebody who wants to really learn more about what opportunities Envision might open up for a project.
Gotcha. Melissa, do you have anything to add on that? Because I know you really know that manual inside and out, and you know verification probably better than just about anybody on the planet. So, anything to add or on that topic of learning Envision through verification and the benefits of that versus,
Yeah, I don't know what folks are going to think of me when I tell them this, but I have personally verified 70 infrastructure projects since 2016. So yes, I've been around the block, so to speak. And I remember fondly, though, in the very early days of working with Envision, I was actually on a couple of project teams, so very much in Jen's position, putting projects through verification. What I really loved, Jen, about something that you said is the value of the learning that you've gotten by putting projects through verification, because verification certainly is a great way to validate the fact that your project is in fact sustainable and resilient, because a third-party independent person has gone through in detail to check compliance against the Envision sustainability criteria. But it's much more than an award at the end of the day. We really do want to promote the learning associated with going through verification. That's hugely important to us and our overall mission at ISI, where we want to empower people to really understand sustainability and resilience in the context of civil infrastructure. And I really want to echo something that Jen said, and I'm glad she said it and not just me, that there is nothing that is quite comparable to putting a project through verification and getting that feedback from an independent assessor who, may come back and ask some pretty tough questions that you had not initially thought about, or maybe looked at an issue from a completely different lens, and therefore can add some additional value to the process. So I think it was really great, Jen, that you zeroed in on the learning side of verification.
Hey, Jen, I have a question, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot again, so you can have some more time to think about it if you need it. I'm good at that. Um, how do I hear this all the time. How do you convince people within your organization who are just not ready to commit to something like verification, or others in other organizations, that this is the right path to go, and that it's valuable and important? I mean, what do you say to them to get them on board?
Well, I mean, I think
right.
You're not going to convince everyone all the time, and we understand that. There's definitely there are definitely a lot more people who are becoming interested. I think that the different topics that are within Envision can be very helpful if there's someone who can't get on board with a whole entire rating system, but might be more interested in a certain type of topic that it's talking about. For instance, social equity is such a big topic right now. And there's a social equity credit within Envision in version 3. And so I think that it helps to be able to show not only that this can help, an overall project to be more sustainable, but it can really look at very specific elements and very specific topics within a project. So if there's, that may be helpful if it's a stormwater engineer, and you can show them the stormwater credit and, see how they feel that aligns with, work they may already be doing, or just part of that, I think, comes from the fact that the system itself was really built, from multiple industry professionals, from multiple industry organizations. And so that provides a lot of legitimacy to the system in its entirety. And then you can use those little kind of pieces of the system to feed people kind of bite-sized sustainability topics if they're not interested overall. But we have been seeing a lot more interest overall. I mean, there are cities that are starting to use the system with regulations or ordinances that all their projects are using it. There are some funding mechanisms that are kind of rewarding projects for using Envision. So it's nice to have some of those kind of facts to be able to back up the fact that this just isn't a system that just came out or that isn't really being used by anybody. And ISI has some good tools on the website, lists of organizations that are using it. So I think kind of all those things are helpful. I would, if I were talking to somebody who wasn't really buying in, I might ask some of those questions like, what would it take to get them to be more interested in it? Or why do they feel like something like this isn't important? And if if you're dealing with the type of person who just isn't going to be interested, then I would say move on to someone who you might have a bigger impact on.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that is such great advice. I love the part you're talking about with the topics. And like you said, if you're beating a dead horse, just find somebody who really is more in your corner, who's willing to go to bat for it. Because it is important. And, we did a survey on why they become ENVSPs, and why they keep their credential maintenance and all of that. And it really on the top of mind was they cared about, and they have a passion for sustainability, resilience, and equity, and they care about our world, and they want to see infrastructure built better. So I think that those are great ways that we can change minds and get people to get on board and keep up with this. Real quickly, before we're going to close in a little bit, we're about 30 minutes in. I want to bring up some more hellos. We've got one from Alberto in Milan, Italy, and another one from Houston, Texas. Man, we have a lot of interest from Texas. Thank you so much, because we've just expanded into Mexico. So we are getting interest from Canada, Mexico, Italy. I really think we're at a crossroads, and you're going to see a lot more. Thanks so much for people like Jen, who are some of our biggest cheerleaders, right, Melissa? we love that support.
Absolutely.
Before we go, is there anything, you guys, that we have not talked about, especially pertaining to the fish hatchery? Because we jumped off and we started talking about verification, and I'm not sure we talked enough about the fish hatchery. You know, did we get it all? Was there anything we needed to say about the brownfield, being a brownfield site, or state of the art, recirculation technologies, anything? I sound so smart right now. I'm actually reading. But, anything that we've missed that we think we better say before we close out the show?
Well, I did a couple things just about the hatchery. I mean, first of all, just the idea that all of these things were incorporated without, having a system or having a framework that they were using, and it met so many of the criteria is pretty amazing. It did get a gold rating retroactively, so that is great. One of the things that are important within the Envision system, it does contribute over probably, this was several years ago, so it's probably, fishing industry contributes $1.5 billion to Alaska's economy every year. So that was a big point that was included. There's also public education facilities within the building sign. So there's a visitor center, there are trails and interpretive kiosks and outdoor viewing areas for where the salmon rest below the dam. So they're sharing with their community. And you had mentioned the brownfield, and then there's also, you had shown the signage, but there's in addition to that, there's other representative artwork throughout the facility. So, they did a good job kind of the span of all the Envision categories. They really had something from each one of those that they were looking at, which even without having a framework like that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I don't think I showed this photo right here. You were talking about the sculpture and the real art. This is pretty cool, isn't it? This is outside the building. I love what they've done with this facility. And apparently tell me if I'm wrong, it's the largest indoor sport fish hatchery in North America. Is that still correct, do you think? Or
I don't know. When it was built, it was the largest. I couldn't tell you if it currently is, but.
Well, we're going with it, Jen. We're it's there. It's out there.
It still says that on our brochure, so it's probably great.
And speaking of those brochures, again, you can go to our website, go to the news on the navigation, and it's the very first story right there, and you'll see all the brochures that talk about it more in depth, because I don't know if there's so many details with this. I'm not sure if we hit on everything that people want to know, but that will really help you out. And also that video, I think I'm going to post it after this on social media, so you can watch like a 3-minute video on this fish hatchery. Really good stuff. Too bad it's not Throwback Thursday, Taco Tuesday. So anyway, a few things before we close. I'm going to bring up some banners real quick. If people want more information, they can also find it on your website, hdrinc.com, our website, sustainableinfrastructure.org. Want to tease a few things we've got coming up. Melissa, talk to us about that Envision Award ceremony that's coming up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a conference coming up in mid-November. I believe it's 18th or 19th. Am I right, Diane? I think so.
That's correct.
We're organizing with the Zofness program over at Harvard, and thought that this would be a fantastic opportunity to showcase all of our Envision verified projects to date. So you're going to be working hard, Diane, producing this video.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to do that this week, actually, to start it. So it's going to be challenging.
I think it'll be just a really kind of fantastic overview of the kind of variety of great projects that have come through verification. So it's so interesting to me that our first verified project was a sport fish hatchery. We've had quite the range. An aquaponics farm has also come through, an entire community development initiative, lots of transportation and water sector projects. So it's been really interesting over the years to see which projects have chosen to use Envision and proceed through verification. So I'm personally really looking forward to this video.
I am too, and I think it's really going to give people a good bird's eye view of just the ubiquity of all of it, and just how, you know, Envision can be applied to so much infrastructure, and it's going to boggle your mind once you see it. 100 projects. I want to remind people that this virtual conference we have on November 18th and 19th, you can renew your credential, one fell swoop. You can take care of it right there. And on the 17th of November, there's actually the ENVSP workshop. So attain your credential through that as far as your training goes. And Jen and I are going to be doing a communications webinar December 2nd at 1 p.m. This is to help talk about the value and communicate the value around Envision. She's going to be very specific on the projects, talking about the value from projects. I'm going to be talking more in general about communications and just the value of trying to improve upon our skills in that area. It's really hard to be perfect, but I don't think anyone is perfect at it, but you know, you strive to do your best. So real quickly, I want to make sure I haven't missed anybody on the comments and say thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Before we close, was there anything that we missed or wanted to reiterate? Or are we good? We're good, I think, right?
I think so.
I have really enjoyed this conversation. I just want you to know I thought it was really interesting. I learned a lot myself. So thank you very much, Jen. Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to close out our broadcast with some music. And the next one I want to tease, actually, it's in a couple weeks. And it's going to be the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, talking about their policies and procedures and how they got this all going. So it's going to be a good one, too. So please tune in for that. And let me find our music for us. This is always such a struggle for me. This is when I wish I had someone else. Where is it? Oh, we got a comment, though. Let me see. Maybe not. I can't see. We've got so many comments. I can't see the new comment. Probably somebody trying to tell me how to do this who's really good at it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.